Here it is. We got some more editing, and more so than just editing. I did want to read a small part of book 3, chapter 11, book 3. I think it's a fun piece, and it's based around Matthew Gumlianeri, right? So I'm gonna start it off. I'm gonna go ahead and start. Chapter 11, book 3. Matthew Gumlianeri brushed the coat of a thoroughbred, a brown coat with a big white spot on the right side buttock and very light brown eyes. Matthew Gumlianeri was always very excited about this thoroughbred because it was very strong and listened very well. Matthew had yet to see his uncle put his hot blood to the test because it was not done being groomed yet. Jim Gumlianeri and his family owned 2 horse stables. One was used for racing horses. The other horse stable was just a family collection. Jim Gumlianeri had started racing horses very young, around the age of 35. He'd taken them to the casino racetrack and brokered his way in because he had all the legitimate paperwork. After years of losing thousands, he had eventually begun to see a turn, so he kept up his stable with just a few thoroughbreds in it. His other horses he tended were for practice, the children, and summers traveling, where he'd take them on the family road trips. Right, so 1 second. I'm gonna stop there because I see something I can insert. Let's do this. Matthew Gumlianeri came often to relax on a farm out of need for the scenery and peace. Today was no different. His wife was still breastfeeding their infant child, and his 9-year-old still wanted as much attention as she could muster. The life of being a father still was a great thing. Matthew Gumlianeri found it challenging but very educational at the same time. He now understood the situation his father and mother were in with more clarity. Antonini Gumlianeri was a soldier in the Gumlianeri family and had built a great name for himself over the course of Matthew's young life. Unfortunately, before Matthew's 15th birthday, his father had been indicted and then died to a fight in prison. Alright, so edit something here. Alright, so I'll start that paragraph over. Well, it's not a new paragraph, but I'll start that section of the paragraph over. Matthew Gumlianeri found it challenging but very educational at the same time. He now understood the situation his father and mother were in with more clarity. Antonini Gumlianeri was a soldier in the Gumlianeri family and had built a great name for himself over the course of Matthew's young life. Unfortunately, before Matthew's 15th birthday, his father had been indicted and then died due to a fight in prison while in the middle of his trial. Matthew Gumlianeri was his father's only child. This quickly made day-to-day life tough for the young Matthew Gumlianeri. In the neighborhood, all the girls wanted to lose their virginity to him before anyone else could take it. In the neighborhood, all the girls wanted to lose their virginity to him before anyone else could take it. Matthew Gumlianeri, being traumatized from the absence of his father, didn't know how to respond other than dismissing all of the girls with haste, allowing his peers a great opportunity to have the girls. The other boys around his age bracket wanted to dance and chase the girls, and essentially be followers of one another. So Matthew was always steps ahead of them in terms of real-life decision-making. Matthew Gumlianeri sat around his father's friends and his uncle as much as possible, soaking up the game. All right, so we'll stop there. So you see here in this moment, we're going from chapter 11 of book 3, and we're dissecting and going and finding some clerical errors here where this part is getting into Matthew Gumlineri. He's on the family, one of his family's horse stable farms type of scenarios, right? So that's the setting of where he's at, and it's just some background about the actual character here being broken down. I'm just looking for errors, any type of spelling errors, any sentences that didn't end in a period, any T's that weren't crossed, any I's that wasn't dotted, you know what I mean? So, all right. Throughout the high school process, his family, all right. All right, so I'll continue. Soaking up the game because of the hand of, hold on, let's go back. Matthew Gumlineri sat around his father's friends and his uncle, Jim Gumlineri, as much as possible, soaking up the game. Because of the hand of his father and the advantages of his uncle being the man in charge, Matthew Gumlineri was able to cope throughout the process of high school. After high school, Matthew went directly into the family business. His father owned a plumbing company and an HVAC company underneath the guise of a shell company where taxes could be avoided. Matthew Gumlineri quickly took advantage of the business and rose in the ranks after just a few years. He became a skilled supervisor over job sites which were beautiful for his mother's sake, right? So again, that's another error right there. So I just fixed that, and we continue. He became a skilled supervisor over job sites, which was beautiful for his mother's sake. And eventually working in and out of different homes and businesses, Matthew Gumlineri would meet a woman named Priscilla Rezlika. All right, so I'm gonna stop there. And that's actually the end of that section. And we're gonna go into like a flashback moment after that. Meanwhile, this part here where I was kind of like hesitant to continue, it's because I was trying to figure out if it needed an adjustment in the text or an adjustment with the character detail, but I think it's pretty all right. It's just all about how you want to read the art, how you want to view the art. How does it sound for you? You know what I'm saying, right? So he became a skilled supervisor over job sites, which was beautiful for his mother's sake, right? Because his father passed away, left him the company, but he had to rise up in the ranks of his own family's company and become a skilled supervisor over the job sites. So for his mother's sake, right, that was beautiful because of what? You know, her husband died, to be able to see her son, you know, take that position and be able to oversee the job sites for the company that they built, then, you know, he made his mother proud, right? So we just giving some detail and perspective into the character here, Matthew Gumlineri. Now, in the background, you may hear a few voices, a few noises. It's just one of the baddies that I like to listen to and watch. So if you hear that, that's all right. Now, we can go into the flashback of this chapter, and it's dating back to 10 years ago, right? So that's what it say in the actual text of the book. 10 years ago. One afternoon, right? So it finished with, and eventually working in and out of different homes and businesses, Matthew Gumlineri will meet a woman named Priscilla Rezlika. And then we go 10 years ago. One afternoon, Matthew Gumlineri and his 5-man team were knocking down a wall in the basement of a home in order to rewire the heating ducts and air conditioning system leading to the master bedroom up on the 4th floor when Priscilla Rezlika entered her residence and approached the stairs leading down to the basement. "Hello there. May one of you gentlemen come upstairs for a moment?" Matthew, being the foreman, jumped from one knee and hustled upstairs to greet the mystery voice. "Hi, hello." Matthew offered a handshake. "Hi, and you are?" "I'm Matthew Gumlineri. I'm the foreman working to fix your problems here. How can I help you? I'm Priscilla Rezlika. I just got back in and I saw your vehicle outside. I just wanted to become acquainted with you before you leave for today. Priscilla Rezlika smiled heavily until their handshake was interrupted. Mother, who's this? Hi, I'm Gulia. Gulia raised her voice and offered a quick handshake and made a point to bring herself very close to Matthew Gumlineri. I'm Matthew Gumlineri with Ben Business Handyman and Plumbing Services at your service. Very nice to meet you. Matthew let his words linger as his eyes drilled millions of questions into her soul at once. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. You're handsome. I will tell you if my impolite mother hadn't yet. Gulia snickered at her mother like a schoolgirl. You've just met the boy and already making a fool of yourself. You already want to be his wife and lose it all to him. Is this correct? Priscilla shot a serious retort back in exchange, which came out unfathomable, but due to Gulia's insult. Matthew stuttered and began easing his way down the steps to the basement. No, don't you run. Gulia pointed her finger. I'm taken aback. I'm not sure what you two are insisting. Matthew Gumlineri gave his most innocent face he could find. This was the first time he'd been offered an opportunity by a customer to have a family member of some sort by their demand. All right, it's a small error right there. I had to adjust. Now we continue throughout this dialogue right there that they having, right? Will you consider me? We can court, of course. Gulia immediately became emotional and even grabbed her mother's hand and squeezed it tightly. Really? I'm so surprised. Why me? Matthew exclaimed and smiled at last. You are a Gumlineri, am I right? Priscilla mentioned matter-of-factly. 100%. Matthew Gumlineri stepped up a few steps with his manhood at the hairs of his chest. So that's a valid reason. You're heading a family business. Such a nice young man. My precious daughter is nothing less than a princess. You and her will be royalty. Right now, I insist, right now, you must take her at once and then court afterwards. Priscilla literally could have done nothing more to seem as if she was forced, Priscilla literally could have done nothing more to seem as if she was forcing her daughter onto Matthew's penis, right? So what we have is Matthew Gumlineri. He's running his family's HVAC and air conditioning company. He's in a customer's basement, and him and his team, they're working, and the lady that owns the estate comes home, and he meets her and her daughter, and they kind of fell in love with him, and they kind of demanding that he take her daughter. Matthew and Gulia walked out of the kitchen area, which was connected to the basement, and into the second dining room. This is where my father has his private dinners with his colleagues. Usually nobody is included in those dinners unless he invites. Father is very particular about who eats in his room. Gulia continued through the house as she held his hand. The statues and pictures were very high end all the way throughout the property, and Gulia couldn't explain them all. Usually nobody is included in those dinners unless he invites. This is where my father has his private dinners with his colleagues. Usually nobody's included in those dinners unless he invites. Father is very particular about who eats in his room. Gulia continued through the house as she held his hand. The statues and pictures were very high end all throughout the property, and Gulia couldn't explain them all. The furniture was spotless. Obviously, the occupants of the said estate never sat on the furniture. But my father has a cleaning service twice a week. They come and clean every square foot and sweep for bugs and dust mites. Oh, look, this is one of our dogs. His name is Stupid I'm a Boss. He is a handsome boy, isn't he? A Lupo, a wolf, an Alaskan Tamaskan. We traveled to get him from the UK. Gulia groomed the wolf breed with her palm carefully as if she didn't need him to jump on her blouse. He responded, well trained. Stupid I'm a Boss. What a cool name. He responds well. Matthew Gomlineri commented as the wolf smelled him curiously. All right, go on. Gulia waved Stupid I'm a Boss away. All right, small error that I'm adjusting. And I'll continue. All right, go on. Gulia waved Stupid I'm a Boss away nicely and then continued to trot through the house with Matthew Gomlineri in hand. What the hell did I get myself into? Who is her father? This better not turn out to be dangerous. Matthew Gomlineri began questioning whether or not he was making a mistake. His father had so many contracts that still remain active. Some, like Priscilla Reslika's, were new. Handling jobs on estates or bigger mansions were not anything unfamiliar to Ben Business handyman and plumbing services. Matthew's favorite aspect of the business actually was commercial jobs because the work was bigger and the checks were always bigger, though at least half the year's profits were made majorly from residential work. To have landed such a profitable contract with Miss Reslika was still a big deal, so Matthew Gomlineri wanted to preserve the deal without error. Gulia, maybe we can slow down a bit. This might not be a good idea. Matthew Gomlineri tried to nudge her with his elbow to create some distance. Meanwhile, she quietly led him up a spiral staircase that was draped with vibrant flowers. Each landing had its own theme of color and floral arrangements, with either lamps or sophisticated bookstands in one corner or another. Why'd you say that? This would be a great idea. You're worried about your contract? Don't worry, you'll be painting these floorboards next. She'll find anything for you to do around here if you're with me. Gulia motioned towards the direct hallway to their immediate left as they reached the top of the third floor, and then she led the way. Sure thing. Matthew Gomlineri walked past several doors until Gulia stopped outside of a pink door with a poster of a gun entangled with a letter Z and red roses. This chick is crazy. What the hell? Matthew Gomlineri thought as she simultaneously opened the bedroom door. Surprisingly, to Matthew, the bedroom was simple. A dresser with a small square mirror on top, a queen-size bed up against one wall, multiple carpets spread across the floor. The walls were painted gray. Pictures were everywhere in frames in some of the walls. A clothing rack on wheels sat near a closet, which made it seem as though she could have been a model. Matthew, up until this point, didn't acknowledge how beautiful she actually was. He was simply shocked by the prospect of what was happening. Before Matthew knew it, Gulia was on top of him, kissing him sloppily. Is this good, Matthew? Am I doing this right? Matthew Gomlineri decided he'd take this seriously. I got you. Like this. Matthew firmly held her face and began kissing her lips and guiding her lips to his and her tongue around his. Gulia fidgeted with his chest and neck, trying to appear as if she knew what to do. Matthew grabbed her breast and became aroused as her body reacted as if in a shock every time he moved his palms. Undress, Matthew instructed Gulia. Gulia stood and began unbuttoning her blouse and then unzipped her pinstripe pants and let them fall off her waistline, showing her shape underneath the linen. She angled one leg and covered her vagina with one hand and her breast with another. Take everything off, remove your hands and clothes. Matthew spoke like a gentleman and sat up on the edge of the bed. Gulia did as told and then out of nervous excitement jumped on top of Matthew and began kissing his neck while her legs were spread by his body. She yelped in pleasure as his hand slid across her body and through her hair, and her body became hotly intense like a furnace. Oh, I've never done this before. I never have. Gulia moaned harshly as Matthew forced his fingers and palms in and around her cervix. This is mine. You wanted this. Matthew kissed her shoulders and chest, indicating his enjoyment of her beautiful body, then surprised Gulia when he positioned his penis inside of her cervix. Move me. Take your time and take me, Gulia exclaimed through sharp breaths. After a few minutes, she could do nothing but wrap her arms around Matthew and wriggle up and down as he dominated a love connection between the two of them. All right, so what we have is Matthew Gomineri. He's on his family's horse farm, and he's having a flashback moment of when he first met his wife 10 years ago. All right, so he's on a work site with his crew, 5-man crew. He's the foreman, and the customer is his wife's mother, his future wife's mother, and he is almost forced and summoned to be her daughter's first love. So that's what that scene is basically breaking down. It's a very beautiful scene and everything like that. So now here we go. We go back to the current moment. All right, so the current moment, again, we're in chapter 11, book 3. Matthew Gumlineri walked about the horse stable with a broom and a dustpan to clean up the horse droppings, thinking of how he and Gulia Rezlika had solidified their early marriage and how they now had more than he could ever have imagined. Her family turned out to be a great compliment to him, and Matthew couldn't help but think from time to time that Gulia's mother, Priscilla Rezlika, knew his family all too well and set him up for the perfect kill, one that he didn't even understand quite that young. But her father became very close, almost like his very own father, and Gulia's father even already had a close relationship with Jem Gumlineri, Matthew's uncle, as they had both aged in the same Brooklyn neighborhoods growing up. Gulia's father was a business shark who trod Wall Street and the likes. Smiling, Matthew Gumlineri dumped the droppings in the big trash bin and set the tools down. She must be keeping you very satisfied. Jem Gumlineri walked to the side of the barn and surprised Matthew suddenly. Ha! You always said the results shall always be the first to tell. I think you were right, Matthew Gumlineri remarked as he walked into a hug and forehead kiss from his elder uncle and superior mafiosi. A smart man to have listened. That girl of yours, she almost caused you to be hit even more than once. Good to see you holding up with some balls. Jem Gumlineri grinned all too seriously. I don't want to talk about it. Matthew turned his face in disgust quietly. Her father would have never let me hear the end of you being hit, Matthew. Jim Gumlineri tested Matthew's grit. Damn. Should I have cared? I had my reasons and decisions had to be made. You want to bust my balls all day about it? Or what? Matthew Gumlineri backhanded his own jawline in aggression towards his uncle. I know. So what's up? What did you want to speak about? Jim Gumlineri sat on an old squeaky chair that looked as if it might just collapse any moment. One that had been around for over 30 years, a family heirloom. We had a captain recently, a good score. I got a few bucks from some offshore accounts he was using. My guy is a hacker. He just needed the documents and some codes that were hidden in a place. You want a piece of it? Matthew Gumlineri lowered his voice as he moved in closer towards his uncle's person. No. Keep it for yourself. Give your wife something nice. I don't know. How was he anyway? Jim nonchalantly dismissed the idea of wanting part of the money taken. A lot of headshots. Not too messy. Not exactly how I wanted to leave him, but he looked good. Matthew Gumlineri smiled widely and licked his lips several times. Jim Gumlineri stood and walked inside of a stable and began grooming one of his breeds, slowly brushing the raised cheekbone until he decided to repeatedly run the dandy brush across the horse's mane. Nice, nice. Very well. And is that your end? No, that's just the latest news. They haven't sent any responses. There's been a lot happening since those other several, and then this. That's why I wanted to know exactly what you will want me to do next. Matthew followed behind him very carefully and watched the horses simultaneously. Interesting. As I put you in charge of it, Jim Gumlineri said flatly, not hinting at any position in the conversation. All right, so I'm going to continue going through the dialogue, and I just had to edit something there. I know, Skip. Give me a break. I want to hit the top guy if you ask me. That's just not the best strategy from the current angle that I have. The cooperation is the other factor that's affecting my next move. Matthew Gumlineri easily pleaded a case. Jim Gumlineri eyed his nephew for a very brief moment and then returned his attention to a thoroughbred. This is Charlie. And that one there, do you remember his name? Is it Shadow Fox or is it Rocky? Matthew tried to remember. This is Shadow Fox. Rocky is undergoing treatment. Come, let's get him some feed. Jim Gumlineri walked to a big plastic container full of horse feed and filled a bucket that sat next to it. Very lightly, very lightly. How old is he? Matthew grunted, trying not to fill the bucket much. Hell, he'll be 12. Okay, so look. Sometimes, as you know, you have to chop a body up into little pieces first before you can do the head. So it's either that or we just play a slower chess game. Don't worry about the honcho yet. He's in my sights. Just break more ice. I'm doing something else. That's why I gave you the assignment firsthand. Jim Gumlineri quickly gave his nephew instructions like shooting darts and hitting the bullseye. Matthew Gumlineri bowed in respect and extended his arm until they both locked the other arm around one another. Salut. Salut. In the dialogue of the text, in the conversation of the story, it's describing how he met his wife, right? How he met his wife and they got married. It leaves you to think. It leaves you to figure that part out. Was it soon after? Was it the same day? It leaves you to figure that part out, right? So that's intriguing. And then from there, he comes out of the flashback, and him and his uncle is having a conversation about a captain in the opposing ICA that has been set up as opposition in the storyline of the book. And they're describing how one of the captains is the topic of conversation, right? And, you know, his uncle gives him the direction of how he feels about everything that just took place. So now, again, I leave it all to you, the reader, the audience. It's for you to read the next chapters, the chapters before that, to get the whole gist of what's going on here. But while I'm editing, you know, for the newcomers or for those that maybe didn't quite understand what was going on when they did read it, this is just a more in-depth, zoom-in perspective for you to kind of, you know, get a feel for the characters, get a feel for, you know, how they speak and how they feel. You know what I'm saying? What's, you know, what the story is trying to convey to the reader. So, you know, and as well, just in the course of editing and adjusting some character detail, you know. So I hope you enjoy. Yeah, indeed.